Welcome to The Harvest, Atlanta's home for information and inspiration for living your season of life with grace. Brought to you by Senior Provisions, your resource for true solutions in senior care. From life planning to home care to assisted living, Senior Provisions is your trusted resource in navigating the harvest season of your life. Now, here's your hosts, Hans and Amy.
Good morning, everyone. We're so glad you're able to join us. Welcome to The Harvest. I'm Hans, and I am sitting next to my bride, Amy.
Good morning, everyone. We are so pleased to be here, and we have to give a shout-out always to Senior Provisions for being our host and sponsor. Senior Provisions is a faith-based, family-owned senior advisory agency here in Atlanta and in the Southeast, and our advisors at no cost to families help seniors and their loved ones navigate through senior care options, and they are working hard as we speak today. So thank you, Senior Provisions.
Well, our question this week, we're so grateful, first of all, for the listeners providing some feedback and some questions for us to talk about on our show. We really appreciate it. Our email comes today to us from Mark in Michigan, who emailed us about his dad living in a senior apartment here in Atlanta. His dad has some mild dementia and he hired a private caregiver to come in every day to help him with meals, housekeeping, and bill paying. Mark has noticed strange, frequent withdrawals of money from his dad's account, but when he asked about it, his dad said the caregiver is buying things he needs. Mm-hmm. When he visited him last spring, he noticed that the apartment was dirty and his dad had lost weight, and he noticed bruises on his wrists. He was afraid that the caregiver was taking advantage of his dad and possibly even abusing him, and he doesn't know what to do.
Oh, my gosh. Unfortunately, this type of question or call we get more often than we care to. There's a lot going on with that question. And just so you all know ahead of time, we were able to advise Mark and give him some resources immediately to help his dad. But it got us thinking about a very important topic, a topic very close to our heart as advocates for a very vulnerable population out there, our elders, is elder abuse. So today specifically, we are going to talk about identifying different forms of elder abuse, reporting it and the steps involved in reporting suspicious things that you're saying. And ultimately, we want to leave you with some ways to prevent these, and at least lessen the frequency of these type of calls that we're getting and stories that we're hearing about. So important topic today, and we're going to be providing a lot of information. And as always, you can always go to our website or to our Facebook page. I'll give that information at the end to get some of this information if you don't get a chance to write it down.
Right. And with this program, we love to put first things first, and we like to start with God's Word and see what God has to say about our elders. Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6:1-2, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for it is right. Honor your father and mother." And it reminds us that this is part of the first commandment, or this is the first commandment with a promise.
With a promise. So that it may, we say this to our children all the time, don't we? Obey your mother and your father so that it may go well with you.
Yep.
Because when you don't, guess what? It does not go well with you. So that's a great truth.
Well, and then we lead on to God calling us to take care of our own parents, and then God calling us to take care of those that have no children, or the children are not able to take care of them. And that comes to us from James 1:27. "Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world."
Our advisor, Mary Ellen Smith, who covers the Gwinnett County and Johns Creek area, love her to pieces. She's been with us for 5 years. Awesome lady, great heart for seniors, great love for her Savior. This is one of her favorite scriptures, and I love it because everyone says, "Oh, well, what is pure? What's undefiled? What does that look like?" And right here, Paul says, "This is what it is."
Right.
It's actually love in action.
Mm-hmm.
It's protection in action.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, I think a good place to kind of start is with kinds of elder abuse. So I'm going to ask you, Hans, when you think of elder abuse, what's kind of the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I think of what you see visibly, the physical abuse, and that's where my mind goes, what we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all kind of have, I personally have seen some really hard images to look at of some direct physical abuse that has been going on, either in a facility or at home. And but there are a variety of physical different kinds of abuse. So I thought I would just kind of highlight those really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It may be some things that folks don't really realize that is a form of elder abuse.
Right.
So definitely physical abuse, kind of inflicting that physical pain or injury on a senior, slapping, bruising, restraining. Restraining is a physical abuse, either physically or with chemical. One of the worst cases of chemical restraints I have seen is in a home setting with some caregivers, paid caregivers,
right,
that were over-medicating a woman. And took a couple of assessments to kind of figure out why she was sleeping all day.
Right.
Well, it's easy to care for someone who's sound asleep. So neglect, the failure of providing food, shelter, health care, or protection for a vulnerable elder. So neglect, we have a lot of senior housing here in Atlanta, and we have just floors and floors of apartments with seniors that are living independently. And for the most part, a lot of them are pretty independent. But there are a lot of them that maybe are having one meal a day, exploiting a senior. That's another form of abuse, taking advantage of them. That can be assets. It could be, we see adult sons.
I was going to say lodging
that are staying in their parents' homes in their basement. And, they're, and I'm doing air quotes. You can't see my air quotes, but they're taking care of their parent, but they're never home. But they have a place to kind of come and crash. Emotional abuse, inflicting pain, mental pain or anguish or distress, humiliating them, intimidating them. Dad, I need your car. And if I don't get this car, I'm going to
withhold this, or
or I'm going to be fired if I can't use your car. So just kind of some really bad emotional abuse going on, abandonment, desertion, and it's hard sometimes when you are out of state. And you may not be intentionally abandoning, but the phone calls each week that you're making to your parent, it may not be showing you the full story.
Right.
And we've been working with some clients who their neighbor has literally been coming in and setting up their medications every day and making sure they have a meal every day.
Right.
They have children, and the children are not intentionally making this abandonment situation, but it's happening nonetheless.
Right.
A real dark abuse is sexual abuse. And I don't know, I know that a lot of you don't automatically kind of think of sexual abuse when it comes to our elders. But we live in a dark and depraved world that is full of sin, and our vulnerable children and our elders are at high risk. So that is something that may not be very visible on the wrist. So I always tell families, if you suspect something is going on with your mom or your dad, be sure that either the doctor or the caregiver is really looking at them head to toe.
Right.
And then self-neglect falls in those categories. So self-neglecting doesn't always seem like it could be an abuse, but it is something that, because of their cognitive impairment, they could be doing to themselves,
right?
Living in an unsafe environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we also talked about some of the warning signs as we talked about these different kinds of abuse. I think, it's fair to, also kind of think about.
Well, I was going to say, let's get into, like, we talked about the signs and the kinds of abuse, but let's talk about the actors in this. Who are the abusers? Are they the caregivers or the home care?
Well, personnel? I'm going to tell you something here that's going to be a little shocking. 90% of those that are abusing elders are adult children or spouses or close friends of the family. Mm. It's the people that they know and they trust. Mm-hmm. And that's, I know, kind of hard, but so there is a huge opioid issue going on nationwide. There is continued abuse of drugs and alcohol. We have a lot of older adults that are dealing with mental illness themselves, emotional illness, mm-hmm. spiritual illnesses. And because of that and the burden of caregiving for a parent, it just creates this atmosphere of frustration, and it just gives rise to opportunities to lose your patient with an elder. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back and talk about some ways to prevent elder abuse.
Every day I manage hundreds of employees and run a successful IT company, but when the doctor diagnosed Mom's Alzheimer's disease and told us she could no longer live alone, I was at a loss at what to do next. Our pastor recommended calling Senior Provisions. He said that they were a trusted resource and that they could help us find a community that met our current and future needs and fit our budget. Senior Provisions guided us through the whole transition, and now Mom loves her friends, feels safe, and we have peace of mind.
Senior Provisions is a no-cost service to families committed to helping find true solutions for your senior care needs. We will help you find trusted providers for home care or help with placement at an assisted living within your budget. Call Senior Provisions at 888-979-TRUE to get the help that you have been searching for. Call today and get the peace you need. 888-979-TRUE.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are discussing elder abuse. It came from a letter, an email from Mark in Michigan, and we're talking about elder abuse, identifying it, reporting it, and how to prevent it. And we want to circle back on what can we do about this, and what does the law say about elder abuse?
Absolutely. First and foremost, there is a Disabled Adults and Elder Persons Protection Act, which was passed and said that domestic abuse, neglect, or exploitation of a person who is not living in a long-term care facility is absolutely against the law. And so it is prosecutable, and you can do jail time if you are caught abusing or exploiting financially or abusing physically, emotionally, or sexually an older adult. That law defined actually what abuse was, and it also mandated reporters. So I wanted to make sure if you're listening today and you have a heart and passion for seniors, you probably are in the senior industry, or you are in senior pastoral care, or you're a pastor with a congregation full of seniors. And if you're listening, you are likely a mandatory reporter. Case managers, doctors, nurses, bankers, attorneys, clergy, all of these folks are our team, every one of us. We are mandatory reporters. And we partner up with the Elder Abuse Task Force here in Atlanta. Great organization on the front line. They partner with the local law enforcement. And we do a lot of education shoulder to shoulder with them.
Right.
And I remember particularly a sheriff in Gwinnett County who just closed down a couple of years ago 14 personal care homes with grievous abuse things going on.
Locked refrigerator doors?
Locked refrigerators doors, restrained people, financial exploitation, everything you can imagine going on. And this is what he said to the whole group. He said, if it looks weird or strange, it is. And he said, report. So that can be a little intimidating. You know, you see your neighbor and you haven't seen her for a few days. She's an older lady. Her daughter's not coming over anymore or not as frequently. And you go knock on the door and you're just knocked over with some, odor in the house. She looks like she's lost a little bit of weight. Maybe someone's coming to church and they just don't look and seem themselves anymore. Maybe you're a pastoral care minister, a Stephen minister, a lay minister going out and doing a home visit. We get so many calls from our precious partners out in the church community saying, hey, this doesn't seem right.
Right. Well, we offer a program that comes in and helps Stephen ministers and lay volunteers that are visiting the elderly. And one of the primary components is identifying the environment, the conditions, and what the signs of abuse are. Yeah,
absolutely. So then the call is, then the question is, how do I make that call? So Adult Protective Services, Hans, if you would like to give that number, here I'm going to put it in front of you. Why don't you read that number out, and then I'm going to talk about the process.
Well, it's 1-888-774-0152, and that is to the Adult Protective Services Central Intake, and they're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
So when you call in, you can share your name or you can actually call in anonymously. And a lot of times when we make these calls, sometimes we'll talk about the circumstances with the social worker on the other end and say, I'm not quite sure this falls in the abuse category.
Right.
Is this worth a phone call? And they're very versed in, that sounds like family dynamics, or no, that sounds like it's worth investigating. So within 10 days, they will go out unannounced and knock on the door. And at that point, they investigate, ask questions of the elder. They are looking around the environment. They're looking at that individual senior. And then if you're the one who made the call anonymously, you give your information to them and they will keep that from the family.
The investigation process.
Yep. Then they'll call you back and let you know one way or the other if it's a legitimate or so it's a good process. Now, I will say this.
Well, I was going to say, too, I think what you started with was really the key element. You called if you have any concerns and help them walk you through whether or not it's something that's warranting a visit and let them be the experts. It does not hurt to make the phone call.
Well, and Georgia is a dual reporting state. So that means that every time you call the Adult Protective Services, if they feel like that a senior is in immediate danger, they will send out a well check visit from the local law enforcement. So we've gotten the calls and, they're.
And again, they're very well trained to knock on the door and present themselves and kind of make that first impression inviting, and then they can kind of come in and lay their eyes on what's going on there, and they're trained to look out for those things that tip them off that there may be abuse involved.
Absolutely. Well, when we talk about prevention, there's some things that we can do. I mean, first and foremost, this show today, increasing awareness of this issue, and calling everyone to a greater awareness, a call to action, open your eyes and look around you. And so that increased awareness is really a great way to prevent things from going, especially with the self-neglect issues or the abandonment issues. Before it gets any worse, to be able to intervene is a great thing. Anyone coming into your home a private caregiver or a agency caregiver, a housekeeper, lawn maintenance, you need to make sure that if they are interacting with your senior, your parent, your older parents, I think about your aunt and uncle out in California, very trusting and we're taken advantage of, that you are criminally background screening and making sure that you know you're working with a company that screens its individuals that are coming into an elder's home. Right. The caregivers coming in, ask, what is your training? Are you trained to deal with dementia?
Right. That's very key.
Absolutely. I mean, dementia can be a very frustrating situation for a caregiver when you're asking a senior to do something and they're, because of their disease process, not comprehending it, not following instructions, maybe repeating themselves, the same question over and over again. And it doesn't take a whole lot to kind of tip that scale towards frustration and cross the line to abuse.
Right.
I think about event we did a few years back. We did a movie with the Alzheimer's Association here in Atlanta over at Johnson Ferry Baptist Church. Great event. We invited caregivers, lay ministers to come in, and donations were given to the Alzheimer's Association. We got to watch a movie, and then we had a little open discussion at the very end of it with the pastoral care at that church. And a gentleman came up to me, and he said, I really need help with my dad. I said, well, what's going on? He said, well, he's got dementia, and he's just as stubborn as you can, as a bull. And I said, well, tell me what that looks like. He said, well, trying to get him to take a bath, and he refuses to go into the shower, and he fights me on it. It's just real frustrating because I'm trying to take care of him. I said, well, caregiving is a tough job, and that's a hard thing to do. I said, are you losing your patience with him? He said, yeah, I find myself yelling at him. I said, has it ever escalated, to anything physical? He said, no. And he kind of hung his head. He said, but I'm really afraid it's going to be a physical thing next. I said, well, first of all, I'm just so grateful that you trusted me with this information, and I want to get you plugged into a caregiver support group, and I want to help you get some care for your dad during those peak care times with someone who can talk to someone with some dementia and coax them into taking a shower because he needs a shower. Right.
Cueing and just those techniques.
Absolutely. A trained caregiver. And you could just see over his face relief and that he had come to the right place and gotten the right answers. So God just got a lot of glory that day for that. So I want you all to know that there is help out there. And
well, and I want you all to know too that you all that are doing the visitations, be encouraged that what you do has a huge impact, and feel like you are equipped to be observant and vigilant and protective of these elders. And please don't hesitate to call us to see what we can do to help, what resources we have available, but also know that you can call Adult Protective Services and get them involved, and they will be a great resource to you.
That's great. Well, thank you for reminding them. We're here for them as well.
Well, why don't you end us on God's Word?
Well, one favorite scripture I have, Psalm 71:9, I think kind of sums up what we've been talking about today. David wrote, "Do not cast me off in the time of old age, or forsake me not when my strength is spent." It's a precious time. Our seniors have so much to give to us. If you have any questions about senior care, you suspect any elder abuse going on around you with any of the sweet seniors that you interact with, don't hesitate to call us at 888-979-8783 or look for us on our website at seniorprovisions.com. And as Philippians 4:19 reminds us, our God will supply all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus.